Hello and welcome back to Far Beyond the World. We will be continuing where we left off, which is after spending a lovely day with Vol and then getting choked out by him because you accidentally said something wrong. I wake up on my own with a drawn out yawn. I slept without a single disturbance all the way into daylight, as made obvious by the sun saturating the room. Despite having a good night's rest, my arms are all sore from the swinging I did the previous day. My mood is in no great shape either. I still feel rather bitter about how it all ended. As expected, Vol has not come to fetch me. I can only assume he's working alone and fuming, most likely blaming me for what happened. Might be for the best. It's not like I want to see him anytime soon. Slipping up on the vernacular is one thing, but I'm not about to ignore the fact that he nearly choked me out again. I get out of bed and walk straight into the kitchen. The air is much warmer today. Their weather really is going in circles. I take a long, lazy stretch as I pass the table and approach the cupboard. The water is stale and dirty. Ranok was doing so much prep before I woke up. I begin to appreciate everything he did to accommodate me. With an uncomfortable sigh, I take a look towards the bucket. There's no water left. Come to think of it, I don't have any food either. I pick up the remaining 2 rolls from a few days ago. I tap them against the hearth, hearing an empty knock. Yep, rock hard. May be good for making toast, but not much else. Vol really left me stranded. I feel anger growing inside of me, such fucking childish behavior. No, not even childish. Kids don't bash their brains out. He's a monster. He certainly acts like one, that's for sure. But, ugh. I don't want to waste time on this right now. I don't need to be getting angry at the rabid wolf. What I need is food and water, and the only way to get either is by going to Verissa. I don't know where the female lives, but surely someone will point me to her. I'm a foreigner, not a mute. If I just say her name, I'll get directions without blowing our cover. I take up the cloak from the hanger and go for the dandelion. It looks just as fresh as the day Ranok gave it to me. I'm about to pick it up when I think about Vol's attack. On an off chance he's going to wolf handle me again, I'd rather the flower remain safe here. Gently, I pat it as if to say goodbye, grab the bucket, and step outside. The day is extremely bright and warm, without a single cloud in the sky. It's quite lovely actually, and lifts my spirits somewhat. To my surprise, I notice a Luna high up in the sky. Then again, I'm not sure why I'm surprised. Moon during the daytime isn't unusual, is it? I jump over the steps and walk onto the path leading towards the village. It's a good few hours after sunrise, so most wolves already would have gotten up and went about their business, meaning the street isn't that crowded. In fact, there's hardly anyone here. My steps gain a cheerful gait and I sway my bucket back and forth. It is a lovely morning. However, just before I reach Vithra's shop, I stop dead in my tracks, noticing Tano walking out from around the corner. Fuck. I look for a place to bolt into, but I'm a sitting duck here, and the wolf notices me just as fast as I notice him. Ugh, that's the last thing I need. Fancy running into you here. Fancy? I just stepped out of Ranok's cottage, you twit. What are you up to? He asks nonchalantly as he approaches. I give him a dumbfounded look. I'm not about to dance to his tune again. A bucket? Could it be you're looking for water? Oh no, I don't want your help. I can show you the way, although it's odd you'd be left unchaperoned. He looks around as if checking if someone had lost a pet. Once he's satisfied that I wasn't misplaced, he gives me a curious look. Out of nowhere, he reaches for me. Before I can swat him away, he takes a hold of my chin and tilts my head, revealing the left side of my neck. What's this? He blinks and his expression shifts to one of genuine confusion. Fuck. You're bruised. I didn't know it was showing. After all, I don't have a mirror. Despite my fear, His expression doesn't shift to malice, but rather actual worry. Who did this to you? Ranok? His voice carries doubt. Or was it Vol? He asks with much clearer conviction. Don't tell me they did it while putting the collar on. What? I blink. I almost want to shout out no, but manage to rein myself in. That's when we both shudder in surprise as Cora's melodic call reaches us from inside of Vithri's house. Tano, cutie pie, I knew I heard your voice. Cora. The male nods to her casually as she comes to a stop and gives me a kind smile. Wait, what is she doing here? Oh, hello, pet. Where might the two of you be headed? Showing the kid where the spring's at. He shrugs, causing the female to look at him with slight disbelief. Kinda odd for you to do that. I thought Ranok left him in Vol's care. You would think that, wouldn't you? He gives me a telling look. So, what happened? You tell me. He looks a bit shaken up. The white wolf nods towards me and I shy away, trying to conceal my bruised neck. Yeah, he does seem a bit spooked. Thankfully, she does not inquire further and just puffs up her cheeks in anger. Oof, I knew it was a bad idea to leave the pup with that brute. Ranok does what Ranok wills. It has always been so. Tano says dismissively, clearly somewhat bothered by her. I wish you guys would patch up things already. This little spat has going on for far too long. It's been nearly 3 years. You're barking up the wrong tree here, he mutters defiantly, and then the sudden shift in the conversation grabs my attention. Oh, come off it, Tano. You're both equally to blame. The female replies sternly. You should swallow your damn pride and make up already, the both of you. It's such a shame seeing friendships like that just thrown away. Wait, Tano and Ranok were friends? Close it would even seem. Maybe said friendship wasn't all that, if it was so easily tossed aside. Honey, you know I love you like a brother, but you can be such a little prick sometimes. Cora says with a caring voice, placing a paw on his shoulder, and I almost snort with laughter. I've known both of you since puphood. Ranok doesn't turn on others easily. I try to set things right. Again, Tano protests with a slight growl. Perhaps you didn't try hard enough. You're the one to talk, both acting like lovebirds. How convenient for him. So he's in on it as well. I guess Vol is the last one to the party. Tano, you're behaving like friends are a commodity you have in ample supply. Do not push it with me. Her attitude shifts slightly, and although her voice is still melodic, it carries more of a serious undertone. Tano also notices it, and pulls his ears back in deference. Sorry, I would just rather we didn't talk about it. He gives me a reluctant glance. The wolf clearly doesn't want me to hear more than I should. Fine. The female sighs, rolling her eyes and then turning to face me. I try to make sure she doesn't notice my bruised throat, readjusting my position and tilting away from her. This does seem to trouble the female, but she does not read further into it. I guess she thinks she's making me uncomfortable. You better get him to the spring before the poor thing dies of thirst. She mumbles awkwardly. Yeah. The white wolf pushes me to the side, forcing me to move. As we begin to walk off, she calls out. But Tano. I can see her toying with her fingers nervously. Know that I very much don't want to be forced to choose between the two of you. Not everything has to be a spitting contest. She almost sounds pleading. And for the love of Aluna, do not take out your frustration on this little one. Why would you think? It's beneath you. You hear me? The female interrupts, giving him a stern look. The Tano I know would not endanger others for amusement, nor to get back at someone. Reluctantly, I give the male a worried look. Seems that not only Verissa has a somewhat good opinion of the male. He notices my gaze and quickly flushes with embarrassment. I'm just taking him to the spring. Glad to hear it. She nods with a smile, approaching me and ruffling my hair. See you later, pet. I'm not really sure what to make of the exchange. However, I'm grateful. Not only did I learn that there's more to Tano and Ranok's hostility, but also Korra effectively put an end to any potential schemes the white male cooked up for me. At least for now. I'm still quite weary following him into the woods. He seems oddly defeated and his cocky, annoying attitude is completely gone. We walk in silence, and as much as I was thinking of slipping away from him, curiosity takes over. I'm not a cat after all. I sneak glances at his troubled expression, but he seems to pay me no mind, clearly buried in his thought. We walk maybe 5 or 10 minutes until I hear the slushing of the nearby creek. We push on through a dense thicket, and there it is. It looks enchanting, with crystal clear water meandering between the different rocks and pebbles covering the bottom of the brook. There's even a cataract every now and then, with cascading streams creating tiny rainbows sprinkling over the misty spray. I almost gasp out in praise, but catch myself at the very last minute. Here you go. Ranok's house is that way. He points, and I take note of the direction. It almost sounds as if he was meaning to leave me here. I wouldn't mind, to be fair. He's making me quite uncomfortable. I dunk the bucket into the stream, allowing it to fill up. Pulling it out is a bit of a chore and a struggle, but I manage. Tano gives me an inquisitive look, as if gauging if I'm going to get back home. I straighten up and try not to show how heavy the bucket really became. As I struggle to walk, the water sloshes from side to side, splattering every other step. Ugh, give it here. The male grumbles in annoyance. You'll spill half of it before you even get there. So much for leaving me alone then. But I'm not complaining. The bucket is pretty freaking heavy. We walk back towards the cottage, again in complete silence. I guess Korra really got underneath his skin. Or perhaps, since he clearly knows that I can understand him, he's just embarrassed I witnessed the exchange. Whatever the reason, it's quite amusing seeing him so flustered. Even he puts on a mask. In all fairness, smugness and overconfidence do not suit him. Ranok pulls them off, but then again, my wolf isn't a dick about it. As we approach the cabin, my stomach rumbles quite loudly, and I wince in embarrassment once again. Do you have anything to eat? The wolf asks with feigned concern. At least I assume it's feigned. I don't trust his courtesy anymore. I just look dumbfounded into the scenery, ignoring him completely. Others told me to keep my distance, and now even Korra called him out on his shenanigans. It's a simple question. Are you hungry? I release a long, protracted sigh, looking at him with bemusement. I know he suspects, but I'm not going to provide him with proof. Ugh, come on. He walks towards the village and nods for me to follow. Since he's still carrying my water, I don't have much of a choice. We walk towards Victory's house again, and the male plops the bucket just outside the bakery. Korra, you still in there? Just a moment. The female responds and takes a while to step out. She wipes her paws into a cloth, smiling wide as she notices the bucket. Wow, I'm impressed. Honesty becomes you. Her eyes turn towards me, but again I try to shy away to hide my bruise. Your father left any food around? Rolls or pies that he wouldn't miss? Wait, she's Victory's kid? The chief was right. The old wolf be popping them all over the damn place. No, he hasn't come back since yesterday. Probably drinking again at the villa. She rolls her eyes in annoyance. I guess those two party hard whenever they can. Why'd you ask? Well, the kid needs some food. Kid? I'm your age, you twerp. Oh, I can help with that. I was making quiches for the pups later. I could spare one or two. Great, that should keep him going throughout the day. Let me fetch them. I give Tano a suspicious look, not really sure where this care comes from. He was obviously only paying attention to me at the feast because of Ranok, but Ranok's not here. What is your game, little one? You want to butter me up before you shove me into a preheated oven? We wait in silence for the female to come back, but she doesn't take long. She rushes out towards me, smiling, and passes 2 decent-sized quiches with spring onions sprinkled on top. Here you go, love. A tart from a tart. I chuckle, immediately thinking I will go to hell for that. I shouldn't call her names when she's being nothing but kind towards me. See, you're much better when you're back to your old self. Ranok would... Can we please stop talking about Ranok? The male finally snaps. Not everything is about him. Cora only sighs, shaking her head in amusement as she returns home. Males. Tano stands there for a while as if thinking something over, but eventually he picks up the bucket and we walk back towards the cottage. Once there, he plops it out at the foot of the steps, and it's just as well, as I did not intend to invite him in. Ranok would definitely not be happy if I did. Well, have a good one. Oh, one more thing. He stops mid-turn, tapping his neck. Whatever caused this, there's more where that came from. I narrow my eyes, as if I'm not sure if it's meant to be a threat or a warning. If he implies that Ranok did it, he's stark raving mad. But if he means Vol, then he should probably know. I bet the black male kicked his ass more than once. I stand there, fuming and watching the coy wolf walk away. To my surprise, his tail sways from side to side, as if he suddenly regained his good humor. Is he fucking with me again? Ugh. I put the quiches onto the table and retrieve the bucket from the outside. This time around, I decide to be more frugal with the water. I use as little as possible to wash up while keeping the rest in the bucket. Because it's so warm, I don't need to fiddle with the fire, so I simply sit back in the chair and enjoy the delightful quiche. It's very hearty and cheesy, with bits of ham and onion in between. That sounds good. Cora's got baking paws, taking after her father, that's for sure. She's also good looking and well mannered. Come to think of it, Drer is quite handsome as well. Apples really do not fall far from the tree. Some people have it all. Then again, it feels like everyone in this tribe is hot, so maybe it's not just Vithri's loins that spawn golden offspring. As my bored and pointless musings began to drag on, I look around for something to kill time with. I'm fairly certain I'll be left to my own devices unless I fetch Verissa, but I would rather not face the female while sporting a massive bruise. That would cause another shit show, and I've seen far too many as of late. Reluctantly, I stand up and walk towards the cupboard. I remember the title mentioning 6 tribes. Now having more context, I'm sure it speaks of the wolves. I locate it immediately and fetch it back to the table. The volume is quite impressive, with beautifully decorated pages and very intricate writing. The 6 Tribes of Chernin. Just as I remembered. The table of contents shows that the book divides into 6 sections, each dedicated to one tribe. The tribes are as follows: Chernin, Brazilian, Goldrin, Arden, Lothian, and Aowen. Sounds like an introduction to Lords of the Rings. The boring edition. Wait, wasn't there like an accompanying textbook that very few people read? Silver Million or something among those lines? Ugh. Those things I remember make me feel like I'm reliving my very own freaking fairy tale. I even have a prince. Albeit I realize he's not as well suited as they usually are, given his dominion consists of his very rustic cottage. Although charming, it's more fitting for the 7 dwarves. I chuckle and return to my read. Chernin, along with Brazilian, compose the heart of the forest. They also share a majestic lake between them called Tremilin. Apparently, it's a breathtaking stretch of water, and the description almost makes me wish for a visit there. It's a favorite summer spot for local wolves. Pups have been playing in the shallows for generations, while others lounge around the beaches. A lake in the woods does seem like a perfect holiday spot, not gonna lie. According to tradition, the lake itself is enchanted, and its waters have healing powers thanks to a fae that resides within its depths. I smile, realizing those wolves, as fantastical as they seem, have legends of their own to share. Thanks to the deep familial ties and shared folklore, Chernin and Brazilian were allied for many centuries. It would seem that the militarized way of life those wolves enjoy is driven from a millennia-old tradition of warfare. Whenever they're not fighting others, they're fighting amongst themselves. Another ally of Chernin, although less faithful and much younger, seems to be Arden, also called the High Forest. It's inhabited by the oldest and tallest trees, reaching all the way back to the youth of Sylvan. The wolves living there take deep pride in their ancient heritage and are extremely protective of their woods. Considering what happened to the tiger noble, I wonder what that extreme protectiveness entails. It cannot be more extreme than killing someone over graffiti. Gilderin is the northmost reach of the woods. The wolves there are strong and industrious and have a reputation for warmongering. Given the militant nature of Chernin wolves, again, I wonder what that means. The book does not keep me hanging. Turns out, it means that Gilderin was an instigator of nearly half of all wars, within and without these woods. Lothian stretches a mountain range hidden deep within the forest, with the highest peak called Amon Silva. That's where the respective tribe takes its residence. According to the book, Lothian flip-flopped during the many conflicts, changing sides often more than once depending on their current winner. Pragmatic, but frowned upon by the remaining tribes for a lack of loyalty. I guess Ranok was right about it being a woven virtue, which, in a mixed bags of goods, it's definitely a redeeming gem of equality. Last place, called the Deep Forest, is Anwin. It is described as a trove of the most beautiful of groves and meadows filled with a bounty and joy. Wolves of Alwyn surprisingly value peace and merriment, rarely if ever participating in conflicts started by the other tribes. Despite the book trying to paint them as debauched and decadent, I see them as quite the opposite. Especially since the description frowns upon Anwin's openness to trade with the outsiders. Had it not been for Ranok, I would have wondered why I hadn't ended up in that forest instead. I chuckle, but my amusement doesn't last long. The more pages I flick through, the more details I stumble upon I would be better left without. Despite dates and names meaning nothing to me, I can make general sense of decades upon decades of systemic warfare. The tribes either banded together to raid and pillage other kin in nearby realms, or, if such consensus should not be reached, raided each other. The book glorifies one hero after another, describing how many burrows they put to the claw, or how many enemies laid slain under their paws. It became increasingly uncomfortable, especially since most of the targets were otherkin, specifically of the Sylvan variety. I really hope this is just a history book, and the current affairs are much different. I'm thrown off by a sudden knock at the door. Cautiously, I place the book down onto the table and slowly approach. My main worry is that it's the black male, and I really don't know how our interaction would go right now. Emilio, you there? Verissa's voice is no real comfort either, as I'm immediately reminded of the massive bruise I sport. Fuck. But I can't pretend not to be in, as that would cause an alarm, while trying to cover my neck would also draw more attention to it. Ugh. I yank the door open, letting the female in. I'll have to bite another bullet. It's becoming a pattern here. She steps inside, giving me a curious glance. Once the door is shut, I try to put on a brave smile, but to no effect. I see you're no longer at the butchery. I wonder why that might be, she states knowingly, her piercing gaze causing me to wince. I dart my eyes towards the side, rubbing my arm and unwittingly exposing the bruise. What's this? Bingo. She gently lifts up my chin to expose my neck. What happened? Her voice takes on a monotone, almost as if she expected this. I really don't want to add fuel to the fire. And I feel that, in part, I was kind of asking for this. Vol is not a chatty type, and if you poke a wild wolf with a stick... Ugh. We were sparring. I blurred out, surprising even myself. What? I was the one who insisted. I was tired of being teased as a weakling, so I asked Vol to give me a few pointers. Her eyes narrow and her brows set on a single line, giving me a look of utter disbelief. He just got carried away. It doesn't take much to bruise me. I laugh awkwardly, but she still doesn't budge. We decided I should stay put until it's gone, so others won't jump to conclusions. She arches one brow, still not giving in. Seriously, if he wanted to hurt me, he would. It was just a silly accident. With Vol, hardly anything is an accident. But suit yourself. Finally, she shrugs me off and pulls out a chair. When I asked him where you were, he simply scoffed at me. I worried you might be left without any provisions, but I see you got fresh water and food. How did that come about? Oh shit. The water was from the spring. And how did you know where the spring was? I wince again, shutting my eyes and bracing for the worst. Tano took me there. Tano? She jolts up immediately. Are you serious? The female throws her gaze towards the table, locking it with the tarts. Those are Cora's, aren't they? I nod uncomfortably. Emilio, you're supposed to keep away from the others. Tano is close to the elders, and as much as I like Cora, she's Vithri's daughter. You're playing with fire, interacting with those two. Oh, for crying out loud, I knew it was lunacy to leave you in the care of that idiot. It's not entirely his fault. Not his fault? He was supposed to make sure you're safe and fed. Instead, I find you foraging around the village, left at the mercy of the very wolves who could get us all exposed. A scant time I get to hear her melodic growl, it sends a shiver down my spine. She must have picked up on my growing anxiety, as she cut it off and gives me a rather startled look. I just stand there almost like a child getting dressed down by their parent. Sorry, I don't mean to take this out on you. She finally sighs, releasing the pent-up anger. There's just a lot at stake here, and somehow everyone's acting as if this is just a game. Ranok suddenly bolting, ditching us with, no offense, you, when he's the one who brought you here in the first place. None taken. I shrug, giving her a weak smile. Then you have Vol, who thinks he can strong-arm people left and right. Not to mention you acting like a pup on a playground, cuddling up to every wolf you see. I'm just fed up with having to be the responsible one. She leans against the table, crossing her arms and looking into the distance. I really don't know what to say to her. It does seem like she's the only one keeping the scheme together. I'm about to speak up when her eyes lock on me again. Why aren't you wearing the dress? Her voice carries a slight suspicion. Was he giving you heat over it again? Is that what caused this? She points to my neck. No. I try to avoid circling back to my row with Vol. I just didn't want to ruin it. Ruin it? By wearing it around the house? Is it not comfortable? She asks with a hint of worry. No, it's great. You know what? You're right. I nod and rush towards the bedroom. I'll put it on. Do you have any moonshine left, or did Vol chug it all down? The female calls out as I unfurl the silk dress. I don't think there's any left, no. Ugh, I'll get some ale then. She mutters while I pull the garment over my head. There, all done. I smile, seeing her already seated at the table and taking an idle sip. Good. The female nods with approval. I didn't spend all the time fitting and stitching it together for you to treat it as tablecloth. True. I mumble nervously, taking a seat and just watching her enjoy the drink. After her second sip, she breaks the silence and looks to me inquisitively. Are you going to join me, or is your intention to make this even more awkward? You're right, I could use one too. I agree and get up to fetch a mug. Since pretty much everything else is dirty, I have to strain myself to reach up for a spare one from the top shelf. I haven't done a proper wash-up in a while, but now knowing where the spring is, I can easily amend that. I dunk the tankard into the barrel and a little concerned about the remaining levels of the liquid. Those wolves do drink a lot. As I take my seat and lean back comfortably, I can see her gaze is still drilling into the distance. She's buried in thought, and I cannot help but think she's worrying about the bruise. You alright? I try to nudge her and she blinks, as if stirring back to life. She gives me a deeply concerned look. This whole setup doesn't sit well with me. I don't know what Ranok's thinking, and Vol... Ugh. She sighs in defeat. He's just doing everything to prove me right. I think Vol is slightly overwhelmed by all of this. In his own way, he's trying his best to look out for the both of you. It would do wonders if you could simply give him some time. I mutter reluctantly. It's not like I'm in a position to give her advice on how to deal with wolves she knew her whole life. But this is new, to all of us. I kind of threw your group dynamic out of balance. It must be hard for him to understand, let alone accept. The female muses for a moment and then gives me a kind smile. You're an unusual person, Emilio. I don't think I've met anyone so empathic and forgiving as you. Then again, I was raised among wolves. She scoffs in amusement. What do I know? A great deal more than I do, that's for sure. I laugh, causing her to chuckle. However, her voice hushes as her eyes land on the yellow flower resting inside the cup. That's a nice touch. Oh? She nods, crooning softly. Do you know the significance of dandelions? Their meaning? No, not really. I shake my head awkwardly, again feeling her knowing gaze on me. They're a flower of healing, but also hope. Between lovers, there's a promise of happiness and loyalty. She emphasizes, and I feel a blush slowly creeping onto my face. Thankfully, she does not linger on it. But above all, they're a flower of chance, a wish away, a reminder that our dreams can come true if we only grasp them. So much meaning in such a small, simple thing. The female pets the dandelion softly, a gentle smile stretching across her muzzle. I find small, simple things the most beautiful. I mutter, not knowing why I said it, and she snickers. Said one small, simple thing about another. Small I might be, but did you just call me simple as well? At least your collar is a bit more subtle. Collar? She's definitely hinting at something. I try to hide my red cheeks behind the tankard, slowly slurping the ale. Ranok was only trying to cheer me up. I brush it off, even if she seems supportive. I'm not about to admit to anything. Besides, the flower is of my choice. I just found them uplifting on a gloomy day. He's been stealing my resolve with them ever since. Considerate too. The female sighs, toying with the dandelion, and I cannot help but feel a little bad. She's completely disheartened, and it becomes obvious she's hinting at the Black Wolf's shortcomings. Vol does seem to care about you a lot, you know. I mutter, drawing her surprised gaze. At first, I think I might have crossed the line, but she's the one who started it. The female simply concedes in defeat. At times, it feels like he does, but then he proves the opposite. For the most part, Vol acts as if he never knew any of us at all. She deflects, trying her hardest not to look emotionally invested into the subject. It's not like she's not right. Vol does seem to ignore many aspects of Ranok's personality. Perhaps he really doesn't know them. Ranok said that he has to keep his mask on at all times. Despite appearances of close friendship, they all seem to be miles apart. And if that's how Verissa feels, I'm sorry about that. I decide to be as frank as possible. I can't imagine how hard it must be to deal with unwanted advances for so many years. It's not like that. She shakes her head. Vol has his moments. There were times when he was actually a sweet wolf. Oh? I raise my brow, not in disbelief. I've actually experienced those moments myself, but more out of curiosity to hear more about that side of him. It was when he finally understood our lives would not add up to be happy ever after. He stopped his obnoxious advances and became a really good friend. It's only recently that his stupid infantile infatuation of his re-emerged. Do you know what caused it? I ask, taking another sip. Yes. His designated mate died a year ago. I nearly choke on my drink. I can't even imagine what it feels like to learn someone you were matched with since childhood suddenly died. I'm so sorry. I blurt out automatically, completely thrown off. He isn't. The female points out with a shrug, and my confusion only grows. I'd say he was rather pleased. It has made him free to pursue his own desires. So here we are. I thought your mating was always planned. Yes, it is, but you can only plan for the first one, she states, as if it were obvious. After that point, both sides are adults, and although we're expected to continue to mate with others, that's entirely their own affair. So there's no backup? Why would there be? Verissa shrugs. I mean, yes, if a designated mate dies as a pup, then you find a replacement. But Vol's mate died shortly before the coming of age. Setting up what pretty much is an adult wolf with another match is both impractical, but also impossible. How so? All wolves are spoken for since birth. There aren't any spares lying about. The female scoffs. Vol losing his mate so close to his coming of age meant that the elders could only sigh in defeat, as another wolf slipped through the fingers. He's free to do whatever he likes in that department. It seems a bit cold and uncaring of Vol to shake off the death of a potential mate so easily, but then again, I guess I was right all along. They're not too keen on their designated hookups, especially if they have an eye for another. I guess the newfound freedom would be why his passions reignited. Oh, that's just the half of it. She waves her paw, sloshing her drink around the mug. I watch as she empties it, giving me a curious look once the silence protracts. Well? I inquire. What's the other half? I see Tano begins to rub off on you. Why is everyone saying that? I blurt out, quickly reminded of Vol's remark. I'm only trying to get to know them. Perhaps because there's a grain of truth to it. I understand you pretty much have nothing better to do than gossip all day, but I have work. Sorry, I didn't mean to pry or make you uncomfortable. Uncomfortable? She blinks. No, I'm not going to say I didn't enjoy the conversation, but we have more important matters to worry about. The female sighs, standing up. Unfortunately for you, now that you've been out with Vol, it doesn't look good that you're no longer working for him. Almost as if he dismissed you, which could also reflect poorly on Ranok. Shit, I haven't thought about that. The whole ward-warden dynamic. Thankfully, I have some errands that you can assist me with. It will look as if I borrowed you for the day, squashing any potential rumors. Making me the most popular ward in town. I tease and she laughs again. Yes, indeed. What are the errands? Considering Ranok's mission might be that of a rescue, we have prepared for the worst. This means wounded wolves. I shudder. Not the answer I wanted to get, but at the same time, I guess there's no escaping the cold truth. I need to face the harsh reality of their lives, the sooner the better. I must prepare salves and stock up on herbs. You can help me with that. Of course. I nod eagerly, but quickly my enthusiasm falters. However, I don't know any herbs. Oh, don't worry. I wouldn't trust your picking skills. You'll just help me carry them. That basket should do. She points to the one resting next to the hearth. Before I pick it up, I give myself a quick look. The dress is awfully expensive. Should I change? I splay out my arms and she chuckles. For what other occasion would you save up a silk dress, if not to frolic in the woods? I know I'm not your wolf of choice when it comes to frolicking, but you'll have to do with me. I snicker. Oh, I really don't mind. Trust me. Mind? She blinks teasingly. You should be thrilled, but I suppose I have to take what I can get. The female laughs, finally opening the door. I think some fresh air will do you good. So do I, actually. For a moment, I consider taking the dandelion with me, but quickly decide not to. I don't want to draw more attention to it than necessary. I simply grab the basket and follow her outside. I find myself staring curiously as she approaches the steps. Is she gonna trip, or... A smile appears on my face as the female jumps over the uneven stone, clearly aware of that little fault. I guess they all are frequent visitors to Ranok's house. I hate doing this, but considering your situation, we should parade through the main village. We need the wolves to see that you are simply working elsewhere. She sighs uncomfortably, proceeding to walk towards the town. Vol really carries a lot of weight in the tribe. We cannot allow others to think you displease them somehow. Okay. I nod, following beside her. I did more than displease him, that's for sure. We stroll slowly, our pace almost unnaturally sluggish, as to give as much time for the passing glances. Verissa is very intent on us being seen. In truth, it feels rather weird, but also a bit exciting to be shown off like that. I straighten up and ensure my step is dignified. I want my wolf to be proud of his ward. My hand instinctively reaches to Ranok's crest on the collar. It became quite a comfort, despite me trying my hardest not to enjoy wearing it. Since he departed, I even slept in it. Considering I didn't take my dandelion with me, it's the best memento I currently have. And much more discreet, that's for sure. No one's here. Good. The female sighs in relief as we pass by Vithri's house. I'm not really sure what to make of both of hers and Vol's reluctance towards the male. He seems rather fine to me. But any pondering of that nature are immediately blown away as we enter the main square. To my dismay, we're headed straight for the butchery. I want to ask her what she's doing, but the female beats me to the point. No matter what's going on behind the scenes, we must keep up the appearance that you two are fine with each other. While not being on a physical one, I very much feel like a dog being pulled by a leash towards the vet. The closer we get, the more I want to break free and run away. But with so many eyes on me, all I can do is obediently follow. Vol? She stops at the counter, tapping at it impatiently with her fingers. What? Ugh, that little bitch came squealing to you, didn't it? The male snaps almost immediately upon spotting me. No, not really. Should he? Huh? He's caught off guard, giving me a surprised look. I bet he was moaning about... His voice wavers ever so slightly as his eyes dart for a moment to the bruise on my neck. How badly I mistreated him. Again, should he? She reiterates, causing him to give another confused look. He didn't tell you? Tell me what? That you went overboard during a playful spar? A spar? He's so full of shock that he's almost blowing it, and I have to intervene, flashing my eyes at him. He just grabbed me into a friendly lock, that's all. I mutter discreetly. A likely excuse to brutalize someone. The blood-red irises do not lose me from focus even for a moment, his gaze drilling into me for answers. It's called character building. The wolf stammers, obviously struggling to understand why I didn't tell on him. Be as it may, you shouldn't have dismissed him like that. It doesn't look good. Ranok left him in your care, and yet I found him today fed by Cora and watered by Tano. I blink, uncomfortable with her word choice. Wait, that last one came out wrong, but you know what I mean. Can't we trust you with such a trivial thing? She sighs in frustration. If you're such an alpha, no one would think that looking after a tiny otherkin would be beyond your capabilities. Fine, I'll make sure he has food from now on. Vol spats in annoyance, grabbing a hatchet and turning away. That should go without saying. But it's more than that. You were meant to keep him company. Ugh, you always come chewing my ear off. If it wasn't the piglet, it would have been something else. He sneers, chopping off a large piece of meat. Seriously, he needs to learn when to put a sock in it. Never mind. Verissa waves her paw, clearly losing interest in continuing this spat in public. I'm going to play the den mother and take care of it, as I take care of everything else. That's my job, right, Vol? Your words, not mine. He scoffs, and she nudges me to move away. Come. We walk at a brisk pace, Verissa clearly trying to get out of the village without running into any more distractions. I'm not dumb, you know. She mutters, giving me a rather displeased look, and I raise my brows in surprise. I know something went on between the two of you, and whatever it is, it involves that bruise. But... The female sighs reluctantly. I will trust that you know what you're doing and won't press for details you clearly don't want to give. Just be careful with him. I smile awkwardly, placing a hand on her shoulder in gratitude. She's definitely the more mature of the trio. We continue to meander between the different huts and cottages, the female ensuring we avoid as many passers-by as possible. Eventually, the houses give way to grass and shrubs, followed by tall and ancient trees. As we push through the greenery, I look back. Seeing enough distance placed between us and the village, I finally feel comfortable enough to speak again. I don't want the conversation to linger on Vol, though, so I'm looking for a change of subject. When Verissa reaches to correct her leather collar, I get an idea for a somewhat natural segue. I was meaning to ask, I mutter, drawing her attention as she bends away one of the low-hanging branches. What's that about? I ask idly, causing her to give me a confused look. You're the only wolf I've seen wearing a collar. That's because I'm a ward, just like you. What? I tilt my head in slight disbelief. I serve at the behest of our ancestors. I'm at their beck and call. Her voice carries a hint of pride as she caresses the leather strap on her neck. The collar is meant as a reminder of my duty and link to them, just as yours is a reminder of your duty and link to Ranok. I touch the true silver crest with a smile. It certainly helps to keep him close, that's for sure. What about your arm? I continue my line of questioning, looking over her to get up with a double curiosity. What about my arm? She muses through a smile, not even regarding me. Most wolves wear some sort of metal band on their right upper arm, but you don't. Does it mean anything? I see nothing eludes you. She smirks, giving me a slightly patronizing look. Those are arm rings. After the moonstone, I'd say they're the second most precious possession a wolf can have. Oh? Inquisitive, aren't we? Well, since I'm stuck here, might as well understand as much as I can about your people. I swat away an insect that flies annoyingly close to my face, and she simply chuckles. The rings are made from true silver, but apart from being expensive, they are also representative of our adulthood. But you don't have one. My tone of voice wavers as I try to understand the connotation. Does that mean you're not of age? Huh, sneaky. You and Tano would really get along. She stops in her tracks, giving me a suspicious smile, and I shrug. I'm simply curious. Huh, to answer your question, I am and I am not. I blink in confusion, to which she shakes her head and continues to walk. There are several stages of becoming an adult wolf. First, you claim your name tree when you reach your 12th year. She veers between the trees, and just as on cue, we're passing one with an inscription carved deep into the bark. When you're 16, you join a pack and claim your place within the tribe. Finally, once you turn 18, you're allowed to undertake a great feat, which, if completed, will enable you to claim your armband. A great feat? For males, the Great Feat is a task tailored by our shaman specifically to test the mantle of a youngling in question. Some have to remain standing in combat circle for a full day. Others have to kill an impressive beast. Some others still have to survive winter in the wilds, all on their own. I narrow my eyes, immediately wondering what Ranok's great feat was. Vol's definitely the one who killed an impressive beast. Or perhaps he survived a grueling gauntlet, standing tall in defiance of others. I bet that would leave a lasting impression on the tribe, perhaps even explaining why everyone's scared of him shitless. I hope my wolf didn't have to do anything too drastic. But then again, nothing she mentions sounds overly tame. All of this seems incredibly harsh. Verissa ponders my assessment for a moment and nods in reluctant agreement. However, her words don't match her concession. Perhaps, but the tribe tries to weed out weakness as early as possible. At the same time, the feat is never meant to ask more of the wolf than it can possibly accomplish. I feel reluctant in posing the question that's on my mind, but I don't want to embarrass her. But at the same time, my curiosity's more piqued than before. Verissa seems quite capable, so the lack of her ring is pretty perplexing. So, why didn't you complete your feat? Females are a different matter entirely. We're considered of age once our flower blooms. Your flower? Despite her not stopping or facing me, I can see her form falter slightly, and it's clear she has cringed a little. Please do not make me spell it out for you. Oh, okay. I get it. Bees and storks and such, a conversation every kid and their parent dread. That's why we have a sex ed at schools, so that we can cringe at strangers instead. We walk in an awkward silence of my own making. I should really read more frequently into their poetic license, especially when talking about the embarrassing subject matter. The female stops next to a large tree, touching its bark. She trails a length of a green growth and then checks her paw pads, giving them an idle lick. Young lichen. Should be good. I watch as she retrieves her crude blade and pokes gently at the bark. The key is not to expose the naked wood, otherwise you'll harm the tree. I just want the top layer. She explains, and I nod in understanding. Name tree or not, they always revere their forests and treat it with the utmost respect. The female struggles for a moment, but eventually detaches a sizable chunk. She breaks it into smaller pieces, disposing them neatly inside her bag. When she's done, we're on the move again. I was quite convinced we'd abandoned the subject, but that's when she picks it up again. Anyway, males have their great feat decided by a shaman. That's why it's so important that a shaman has both the insight and foresight. She speaks casually, continuing our trek through the woods. However, our great feat was decided by nature a long time ago. According to our customs, there is no greater feat of strength than to give birth. Only once a female has her first litter, she earns her arm ring. Simply put, unless you bear pups, you're not considered an adult she-wolf. I frown, uncomfortable with such an assessment. It almost sounds like a soccer mom club, snobby mothers telling you off for not knowing anything because you have no kids. You don't know what doing laundry means until you have children. God, I hated those. That seems a bit unfair. I mumble, quite confused by the arrangement. I guess. She shrugs. Though by the way my mother spoke of it, giving birth does seem like the most horrifying and wonderful thing a female can go through, so I'm not that bothered by any perceived inequality. I can see through a nod, but then another thought hits me. Wait, but you're set up with a mate since pups. Why didn't you know? I can't believe I actually went there. I struggle to fully verbalize the question, but thankfully she gives me a knowing look, and I don't have to. Is your mate not of age? Or is he, like in Vol's case? Oh, he's of age, and alive all right. But there were some complications. She states indifferently. We cannot mate until both sexes go through their coming of age ceremony. Actually, you didn't mention the coming of age as part of becoming an adult wolf. Because it's not really. It's more of an affirmation. She holds off, overreaching bush, waving at me to pass through. When you complete your great feat, you only prove that your body reaches adulthood. Coming of age is meant to test the spirit as well. Each wolf gets a summon on the eve of their 21st moon. They get cleansed, they meditate, and they receive spiritual guidance. So Ranok is 21, give or take. I mean, lunar calendar is a few days short. Again, just like the Great Feat, the instructions are specific to each wolf. Once undertaken, the coming of age connects us with our ancestors and signifies that we carry their favor. Only then do we become fully fledged members of the tribe. And only then can we mate. We need to be ready body and soul. The female stops to inspect a group of conchs sprouting from an old elm. She carefully cuts one off and puts it in her bag. You see, despite flowering, I still had to wait until I finished my ceremony. Moreover, one of the better perks of becoming anointed by the spirit is that all earthly claims on you become null and void. So yes, my mate is of age. A bit displeased, I'm sure, but of age. Wait, so why does Vol pursue you then? What do you mean? Isn't it obvious? No, not really. I thought you said being a shaman made you celibate. Oh, Moon, no. She chuckles. It just means that I'm the one calling the shots now. I'll mate with whomever I choose, and when I see fit. And this is where we arrive at the other reason behind Vol's reignited infatuation. Shortly after he gained his freedom, that's when our shaman fell ill. More importantly, his actual apprentice at the time was Andalt, not me. But the shaman had a vision, where the ancestors named me his successor, sidetracking years of training and tradition. The female takes a deep sigh, almost as if it wasn't a pleasant memory. With that one announcement, he has uprooted my entire life. But at the same time, he gave me freedom. Vol took it as a destiny clearing a path for us to be together. And you don't? I ask, confused to hear her say that with such irony. Just because we both got freed from our matches at the same time doesn't mean... Ugh, you wouldn't understand. The female waves her paw dismissively, but I just give her a stern look. I understand that you of all wolves would see how crazy a coincidence that is. Fate or not, I'm not going to ignore who he is. Vol is unbearable. As a friend, I couldn't wish for a better wolf at my side, but as a soulmate? She snorts ironically. No. It almost seems like she does feel something towards the male. At least, the exasperated disappointment suggests she's not entirely dismissive of him. Vol does make a good companion. He just gets in his own way too often to let any good faith to bloom. That's because he doesn't know how to show his feelings. I mutter, drawing her attention. I think he just believes he has to act tough and rough, because that's what's expected of males around here. Even Ranok has this weird attitude that a male has to be all that. If he cares so much about me, then he should know that that's not what I expect of him. I need a friend, not a lover, and with him it's always one or the other. What if he could be both? I propose a question and she nearly chokes. She looks at me stunned for a moment, but then lets out a mocking laugh. Ha! That would be the day! I try to nod in agreement, despite the irony in her voice. I appreciate you speaking of him kindly, especially considering the badge of his esteem you bear on your neck. But one cannot keep explaining away certain behaviors. At some point, it just becomes wishful thinking. Or worse yet, enabling. She lets a frown take over her expression. It lingers and I feel slightly worried that I might have upset her, but she quickly banishes the gloom. Anyway, I am quite young and I have more pressing matters to attend to. I'm in no rush when it comes to romance. I nod with a smile and we continue our walk. She rummages through the different shrubs, clearly looking for specific things. Sometimes those are berries, sometimes leaves, or simply just bare stalks. The silence protracts, and I keep mulling over our little conversation. Since I don't feel like pushing further into Vol's territory, I decide to entertain my plain curiosity. This got me thinking, if the only way for a female to get an arm ring is to bear pups, what if she turns out barren? Well, I guess you answered your own question. No pups, no arm ring. Verissa shrugs. And what if the male is the problem? That's hardly ever an issue, because we mate with multiple partners. A barren male will leave a trail of dissatisfied females. Damn, an answer for everything. I cannot help but feel like their sex life has been deprived of a deeper meaning. It seems so systematic, like a process to go through to get your parking validated. It's also why a male's first mating is usually quite intense. She throws in randomly, her tail giving an idle flicker almost as if she meant to tease me, and I take the bait. What do you mean? I blurt out, trying to stop a blush from creeping onto my face. Well, there's a lot of pressure to make sure that one gets it right the first time. From what gossip I understand, that the first-timers are very much in demand. The female chuckles as she inspects a bloom she had found between the roots of a large tree. They keep going at it throughout the day and night, often even creeping into the second evening, all to ensure the deed is done. How is that a good thing? I mumble, not able to imagine a 24-hour sex marathon. Apparently, we females are very hard to satisfy, so a male that is a long runner is very much a good thing indeed. And just like that, I feel extremely flushed. But in all honesty, it does sound quite enticing. Ranok's naked image pops into my mind, and all I can think about is him claiming me for hours on end. After all, as Vol said himself, Ranok has stamina. Shit. She notices the shift in my heart rate and laughs. I knew you'd find the subject interesting. I look away as she kneels next to another shrub, picking through some leaves and cutting away certain branches. I mean, it's human nature, right? She blinks. I'd say just nature, but I know what you mean. I try to rein in my runaway train of thoughts and bring myself back to the conversation with my dignity intact. It sounds as if the longevity of the mating is born more out of desperation than passion. It's a mixture of both, Verissa concedes, still rummaging through the shrubbery. I mean, the males are 21 before they get to wet their wicks. There's a lot of pent-up energy there, surely. You've noticed. I'm not sure what you mean. I nearly yelp out, surprised she keeps pushing my buttons, and the female laughs, standing up. Oh, I'm sure you're sure what I mean. She croons seductively, lifting my chin with her paw. Ranok gets excited at the slightest of touch, Vol going mental over anything that has to do with me. They're all on edge. Oh, yeah. I mumble. I get it now. She teases one last time, finally continuing our walk through the woods. But yes, I suppose there is a bit of desperation as well. I mean, no male wants to walk out of their first mating without fathering pups. That sort of mishap leads to unfortunate rumors, which are awfully hard to wash off. Even if he eventually sires a pup? I ask, slowly managing to lower my own excitement. The more clinical this conversation becomes, the better. Well, supposedly, a male failed with 2 females, and suddenly succeeds with a 3rd. She poses her own question. Less kind among the tribe might question if it was he who finally accomplished the task. That sort of thing stays with males for the rest of their life. Verissa admits uncomfortably, kneeling next to a small clump of mushrooms. So all in all, we females don't have the bad end of the stick. There is no doubt if the pup is ours. She plucks a few of them, giving them an idle sniff. All of this sounds so incredibly wrong. She ponders, standing up and giving me a telling look. I'm not trying to be judgy. I protest, lifting my hands up. I'm just trying to understand your culture. From what you say, it's just a self-perpetuating system that is driven by fear and paranoia. In fact, it prevents you from considering your true feelings and attachments because your reputation is at stake. Well, when you put it that way, I suppose you're right. She shrugs, turning away and approaching another bush. How else would you put it? I ask, as she looks between the leaves, picking at oval, red berries. I mean, even you yourself admit that you're glad to be outside of it, capable to make that call when you want and with whom you want. Deep down, you know it's how it's supposed to be. I wouldn't go that far. She refutes indifferently, still focused on her task. True, it's nice to have a sense of agency from time to time. However, if I were forced to mate with my intended, I would have pups by now. That wouldn't be the worst outcome, would it? The female finally faces me with a weak smile to put an emphasis behind her question. And once I had that out of the way, I'd find time to seek love and companionship, just as countless wolves did before me. As it happens, right now neither motherhood nor a soulmate are at the top of my priorities, so all possible outcomes are entirely indifferent to me. She shrugs, giving me something to think about. I guess she really does look at things from a wider perspective. It's nearly impossible not to admire her stoicism, although I struggle to understand it. For someone so young, you are young, both body and soul. You misplace a lot of your attention on romantic feelings. Verissa reiterates, looking deep into my eyes. You're without memories, away from your home, amongst creatures you see for everything but what they truly are. Your enemies. Your life is on the line, Emilio. I swallow heavily as her voice takes on a rather serious tone. I suggest you rid yourself of all childish notions for the nearest future. It will help us all a great deal. She laughs me off and proceeds to walk deeper into the forest. Despite feeling foolish, I try not to show it and walk briskly next to her. The woods become denser and darker, as the thick canopy above us acts like a blanket. Verissa is clearly on the lookout for some herbs, task in which I have little to contribute. The protracting silence begins to grate me, and I consider her last words carefully. Instead of focusing on triviality, I need to think more about our current predicament. I decide to touch upon a matter I meant to discuss with them for a while now. Speaking of something that could help us a great deal, I recently discovered I speak different languages. Yes, Woven being the prime example. She teases, shaking her head. No, I mean, I don't know how to explain this, but I don't hear other languages, but rather... Ugh. The female takes a stop and gives me a curious glance. They all blend into one. What do you mean? So you know how you hear Woven, right? Yes. That's how all languages sound to me. Huh. She sounds confused. The chief at the feast, I understood what he was saying in those human languages. Granted, I assume you would. I met with a shrug. You're a human after all. No, you don't get it. I try to figure out how best to spell it out for her, and then I remember my exchange with Trist. Uncertain if I should spill the little nugget of information or not, I hesitate for a moment. I mean, we did make a truce, and throwing him under the bus like that doesn't seem like me keeping to my end of the bargain. Reluctantly, I decide to keep my knowledge of Silovin to myself for the time being. Not sure what paranoia it would feed into the hearts of these wolves. Perhaps they think I'm a spy? But the human language should be enough to convince her. When he spoke human, it sounded exactly the same as a Woven does. In fact, either of the human dialects sounded the same. She thinks for a moment, looking rather perplexed. Despite her collected outward appearance, I can see she's struggling with the concept. Isn't it how multilingual people function? What? Now I'm the one thrown off, blinking at her question. I mean, I don't even know how speaking another language works. Woven is all I know. I never needed to learn a second language. Doesn't it auto-translate in your mother tongue in your head? Huh. I'm stumped. I mean, yes, sort of. I get increasingly confused, not even accounting for the possibility that she doesn't speak any other language. But you should be able to tell the difference, even if you subconsciously understand the meaning behind the words. They're not the same. But you do understand them subconsciously. She points that out. By your own admission, that's how it works, right? I guess? My convictions falter. She's going to rationalize it, isn't she? I still shouldn't hear them as one and the same. I'd say it's just confusion caused by the trauma that's behind your memory loss. Your mind is trying to make sense of more important matters than language barriers, so it skips them. She shrugs and continues to walk away, almost as if letting me know she's done with the subject. But... I sigh. I guess so. I'm surprised by her dismissiveness, but without revealing I speak Silovin, there's a little chance to make her reconsider. And since she's the most reasonable of the trio, I doubt I'll have any more luck with either Ranok or Vol. Defeated, I shake my head and decide to simply enjoy the stroll for what it's worth. I watch as she inspects different growths, picking through their leaves and berries. She places some of the greenery into my basket and the silence continues. As it drags on, I begin to feel rather uncomfortable. Desperate for another topic, I think back to the morning exchange between Cora and Tano. It got me curious about the relationship between the White Wolf and Ranok. There's one more thing I was meaning to ask you. Lucky me. This morning, when I was in Tano and Cora's company, quite inadvisably, might I add, she interjects with clearly displeased tone. Well, they talked about him and Ranok, about their friendship and eventually falling out. I can see she's feigning interest and surprise, clearly wanting me to continue with the query without having to add anything to unprompted. I was just wondering, why did they fall out? And you're asking me this because you're Ranok's friend, are you not? I am. She stops, giving me quite the perplexed look. And that is why I hold my peace on the matters that do not concern me. If you wish to know what happened, and should he want to divulge, that is his story to tell. Unless you mean to ask Tano. The female shrugs mockingly. Otherwise, it's just hearsay. Despite being sassy with me on the occasion, this is the first time I'll see her being this touchy. Almost as if Ranok and Tano's falling out was more than just that. My curiosity aside, I decide not to confront her further on the matter and just drop it. Although it's good to know that she keeps her friend's confidence. It makes me ashamed that I even asked. In truth, I definitely rather hear this from Ranok. Conversation's going nowhere. I just observe as she goes about her business, picking different herbs and explaining their names as we continue. Yarrow, rosemary, salvia, and silverleaf, all meaning very little to me, but quite important to her work. I at least know 3 of those. I try to pay attention as much as I can, as I deposit them into the basket, but my simple mind can handle only so little. They're just green leaves to me, aside from an occasional clump of moss or a shroom. Witch elm is apparently important for healing ointments, like the one used on my stab. She wedges her rusty but trusty blade into the bark to gain another few chips, as well as harvest some leaves. Could you look around for moss? The female asks idly, continuing to pick through the branches. Sure. I nod, walking off some distance and checking various trees. Not far off, I find a tall birch covered with a green growth. Is this one okay? I call out and she leans from behind her witch elm. Not sure what's so witchy about it, it looks like a regular tree to me. No, that's not the one I'm looking for. I need moon moss or swan's neck, preferably both. Verissa grumbles, struggling with the more stubborn of the elm's limbs. Yeah, that tells me a lot. Moon moss is blue in tint and has small white polyps at the end of each stalk. Swan's neck, she huffs, has a fern-like leaves with stalks that bend in the shape of a swan's neck. Thus the name. I chuckle, seeing her fall onto her rump as the branch finally gives way. Despite initial confusion, I quickly manage to locate what I assume is moon moss, very much as she described, blue with white dots speckling its surface. I think I've got it. Good job. I can hear her strained breath as she carries a sizable heap of leaves towards me. She dumps them into the basket and inspects my find. Real good job. Her voice takes a more impressed tone. I think this one is just sprouting. That's good? That's excellent. She perks up her tongue in a determined fashion and begins cutting at the roots of the growth. Once she has her fill, the female looks around to find our bearings. Really, all that would be needed is some swan's neck, but it isn't that much of a deal. Let's take a roundabout way back to the village and count for our lucky streak, Sounds good to me. I smile and proceed to follow her lead. In all fairness, I'm quite confused when it comes to our position, so having her as a guide is quite comfortable. As we walk through the thicket, I cannot help but wonder about all the different plants and berries spurning about. I'm sure it's too cold for them, although the forest does make it feel that it's much warmer than I'd think. I cannot help but notice... Have you actually tried? She snorts, mocking my constant vigilance, but I decide to ignore the jab. That the plants here... aren't they a bit anachronic? My, someone ate a whole dictionary for breakfast. The female continues to tease, and I chuckle. I mean, they're slightly out of time, no? It is early spring. Chernin is very... specific like that. Verissa responds, pushing away some shrubs to create a safer trail for my bare feet. It springs to life relatively quickly after winter, and plants here are governed by their own rules. To us, it's just normal, but I do understand it's quite unusual elsewhere. She shrugs, stepping over a large, fallen trunk. Some call Chernin the furthest part of the Everspring Woods. Everspring? I ask, stopping beside her as she looks beneath the log for some additional specimens. Yes, it's an enchanted forest ruled over by the Lynxkin to the very far north of Avalon. But it's just a poetic comparison. Both woods are far apart and have nothing in common. Her voice wavers as she strains to reach something from underneath. Why is it called Everspring? It is said to be in the state of perpetual bloom. The female finally huffs, pulling out a handful of small mushrooms. Sounds magical. And boring. Autumns here are quite something, I tell you. She muses while dusting off her dress and entering a more energetic step. As we pass through another thicket, I notice a large swath of purple flowers I'm sure I'd recognize. I think about picking a few stalks when she suddenly grabs my hand. What are you doing? I wanted to pick some lavender to take home. It's not that it smells or anything, but it would be a nice change of ambience. That's no lavender. The female frowns, releasing my hand. That's wolfsbane, deadly poisonous. What? I jump away, almost as if I were to be bitten by a viper. Don't worry, simply touching it would cause you harm, but you better not mess around with it. Damn, it looks so pretty. I could have sworn it looked like lavender. Easy mistake to make, perhaps. She concedes. But a serious one nonetheless. A bundle of lavender will ease you to sleep. A bundle of wolfsbane will send you to the great beyond. Yeah, no thanks. I mumble awkwardly, rubbing my arm. I should definitely stay away from picking herbs anytime soon. That's wild lavender. She points in a different direction to a bunch of green stalks in the distance, but those are barren. Verissa quickly picks up on my confusion. It's not the season for it. Lavender is a late summer bloom. Huh. Yeah, you better not mess with our flora unsupervised. She laughs me off and invites me to walk beside her. We continue meandering through the thicket, but despite our detour, we don't stumble upon Swan's Neck. I make extra sure to inspect every moss patch we find, regardless of her protests and resignation. I want to be useful for something. Eventually, we arrive at the main square and she picks up the wicker basket from my hand. I better head back and get those sorted. I'll check on you in the evening before the feast, if that's all right. Sure. I won't be able to stay long though, so don't get your expectations high. I won't. I chuckle and brush her off. Maybe my heart does sink a little, that I have to spend the rest of the day alone, but I won't let her know it. She has a lot on her mind, and if any of this harvest is meant to create some sort of panacea for the wounded, if there will be any wounded, then I'd rather have her at it as soon as possible. Head straight for the cottage and do not stop for anything. We really don't need to draw any more attention, and you have a tendency to do just that. I nod and simply rush off, my silk dress swooshing on the wind. There's no reason for me to run, but I really want to get out of sight, especially since more and more gazes land on me. As I pass different wolves, they express their unhappiness with me being out and about. Where's the fire? Calls one I nearly bump into. Ugh, I can't believe he left it unattended. Now the monkey's running wild. Another jab from a complete stranger, but I don't mind. Out of the 6 alphas in this tribe, I have the confidence of 3 and the curiosity of the 4th. I'd say I'm doing pretty fine, thank you very much. It doesn't take me long to reach the house, and I jump over the steps. It's good to be home. Once I close the door behind me, I take a deep breath and try to relax. The walk in the woods was both insightful and invigorating, as pretty much all exchanges I had with Verissa to date. Quite parched due to our stroll, I take a mug and dunk it into the barrel. I really need a drink. Flopping uncomfortably into the chair, I simply sip and unwind, thinking about the crazy 2 days I had so far. Despite missing Ranok a whole lot, plenty enough is going on to keep my mind occupied and buzzing with activity. From Vol's infatuation and childish outbursts to Tano's curiouser and curiouser past with Ranok, Korra's apparent sadness at their falling out, and Verissa's evasiveness on the matter only add to the mystery. There's so much to think about, and my imagination runs wild. Could Tano be Ranok's first crush? It would explain this little back and forth at the feast. But then again, how would Tano take away Ranok's happiness? If they were an item, was it a heart-wrenching breakup or a story of betrayal? I snort at my wild theories. It almost feels as if I've suddenly slipped from a fairy tale territory into a Spanish soap opera. Despite how exciting the speculation is, I do find it quite disturbing that Ranok and Tano's feud seems to run deeper than just the superficial. Friends or lovers, I'm not sure how I feel about the deep bonds that severed so completely, especially if it was over something stupid. And knowing Ranok, it definitely was something stupid. 3 years means they were just teens. Not that I deny my wolf any credit. He is quite patient, but he also tends to dance around the truth a whole lot. With love or friendship, that's never a good practice, especially if one is stubborn to admit wrongdoing in the first place. Then again, Tano is very underhanded and a sneaky guy. Maybe he fucked Ranok over one too many times. My wolf is quite principled. Being constantly let down definitely would not sit well with him. Unless it really was more than that. I wonder if they... No. I've been getting excitingly distracted by the horny stuff while here. It's none of my business if they did stuff or not. I just wouldn't want to be caught in a crossfire. Tano seems like a wolf you really do not want to piss off unintentionally. I try to keep myself occupied by tidying up the place, washing up the used-up dishes, and making sure the cottage is presentable for when Ranok finally returns. Because he will return. I just know it. In the meantime, to keep my spirits up, I'll just think of all the conversations we had once he's back. The idea of all the answers I can get makes me quite excited. Excited enough to steal my resolve again, any pervasive thoughts. I simply pet my dandelion and drift away on a daydream to the moment I'll see the goofy wolf again. Eventually, it gets sufficiently dark that I realize my musings have taken me into the evening. With very little left to do, I drift off, and overthinking stuff is pretty much all I have. And that's not good. I start up the fire and simply heat up one of the pies in a small pan. I savor the meal as much as I can, but between the warmth of the hearth, the food, and the ale, I begin to drift off. A soft knock on the door stirs me from my stupor, and I rush to open the doors. Hey there, pet! Cora catches me by surprise, and I blink in confusion towards Verissa's bemused muzzle. Clearly the curious female followed her here, intent on going to the feast together. Well, go on. The tawny girl is overly excited, and it gets me increasingly curious and awake. Finally, Verissa rummages inside of her bag and places a pinkish-looking bar onto the table. Is it sote? It's soap! She elongates her speech, as if she was talking to a child. For washing up! Now she follows up with a pantomime consisting of rubbing her own tits and pits. I give a discreet glance to Verissa, matching her irked expression. It smells of flour. Please do not. Finally, the white female grabs one of her paws. He's an otherkin, not a moron. Sorry. Cora mutters awkwardly and readjusts her expression. Just smell it. She grabs the bar and takes a whiff, inviting me to do the same. I shrug and decide to entertain her. It smells of lavender. I blink, looking to the white female. I had some dried florets and found an old recipe. It wasn't hard to make, just needed some tallow. She shrugs, causing Cora to scoff in amusement. I know how to make soap, V. She blurts out through a snort, and I sigh internally. Of course she does. She's cute, nice, and somewhat smart, and handy. I was talking... Verissa cuts off, rolling her eyes in annoyance. To myself. You need rest. You overwork yourself. Cora waves her paw and ruffles my hair. Anyway, pity we have to leave him here, but we better go. I don't want to get another scolding from Aldris. Yeah. You go ahead, hun. I'll just check in on something. Okie dokie. See you later, Pat. We wait, watching as Cora steps outside and Verissa leans in with a whisper. Stay put. I nod, holding up the pinkish bar. Thanks for this, V. I tease her with the newfound nickname. Ugh, don't you start. I made it to give you a little taste of home while Ranok's away. I assume you wanted lavender for toiletries, and Ranok did mention you talked about soap earlier. He did? I blink, again taken aback by his constant thoughtfulness. It's better you wash up using this than take an accidental bath in wolfsbane. That would not be pleasant. She snorts, causing me to shake my head. Either way, I'd better go. It's much more brief than I'd hoped, but such is life. Don't worry, I get it. I nod and embrace her, causing the female to stumble slightly in shock. For a moment, I think I have crossed the line, but she reassures me by returning the hug. Stay put, she reiterates before taking her leave. When she's out, I just bounce the bar in my hand a little and then place it on the cupboard. I'm thinking of using it now for the moment, but considering how tired I've gotten, washing up would just wake me up. And I'm not about to spend a lonely night in this empty house awake. Instead, I drink a cup of water, pet my dandelion, and put the fires out. As I pass the rack, I pick up one of Ranok's cloaks and take it with me to the bedroom. There, I pull off the dress, fold it neatly onto the chest, and slip into the linen. Once I'm comfortably splayed out, I snuggle into the cloak and inhale deeply, trying to remind myself of his scent. With at least a shred of his presence, I feel safe and snug, slowly drifting off into an effortless dream. And that's where I'm going to leave it for today. So that was a nice stroll with Verissa. We got to learn a little bit more about her. I guess a bit more in depth and a little bit about the dynamics, I guess, of the wolves. Well, not the dynamics, I guess the dynamics of adulthood for the wolves. And while I guess it seems a bit sexist how, they both reach adulthood, in a way, I guess for them it's fine because, childbirth is considered to be one of the more painful pains that anyone can experience. And technically speaking, that means that the females in these woven tribes are the stronger of the two sexes. So, And yeah, I get it's also nice to see that Verissa has a bit more agency on her life, and she is a bit more aware of what she wants to do at the very least. She's in no rush to get pregnant or to find a lover or anything, even though Vol is like literally at her feet, kissing her feet, like ready to get it on. I have to wonder though, in the future, if Vol and Verissa, if they do end up together, if it's gonna be sort of like they're gonna, and forgive the expression, tie the knot. And there's also Tano, and I'm curious to know more about the little white wolf, because as much as I guess disliked him a little, he is interesting, and I wish to know more about the little wolf and what his connection to Ranok is. Hopefully, that will be eventually revealed in the future, maybe in the next update. Hopefully. We can only hope. Well, I can only hope. But anyways, thank you all for watching / listening. If you would like to play Far Beyond the World yourself, there will be a link down in the description. If you would like to support the creator, there will also be a link for their Patreon, where you will get earlier access to builds of Far Beyond the World. And by earlier, I mean you'll actually get it before I do, because I don't have access to those early builds. I have to rely on the public builds. And if you would like to follow the creator on Twitter, I will also put a link down for their Twitter. And I guess I will see you guys later. Bye bye.